Let me ask you something most men never stop to question. What actually makes a woman stay emotionally connected? Not just attracted, but captivated, drawn in, emotionally invested. If you're like most men, you've been told it's about being charming, or looking a certain way, or doing all the right things. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what we've been taught about attraction is backward. We're told, make her laugh, compliment her more, plan elaborate dates, be the nice guy, be available 24/7. And yet, somehow she still pulls away, goes cold, or worse, she loses respect. Why? Because women aren't emotionally moved by effort alone. They're moved by energy. And energy is something you don't fake. It's something you embody. Let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed that the men women obsess over aren't always the richest, tallest, or best looking? Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they say very little. But they carry something powerful within them, a deep inner stillness, a presence, a sense of calm control that doesn't chase, it draws in. This is where most men miss the mark. They overgive, they overtext, they over-apologize, they over-explain, trying to fix or impress or win affection. And the problem isn't that they're bad guys. It's that they're disconnected from their own masculine center. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that. When you lose your center trying to gain hers, you're no longer grounded. You're reacting. You're performing. You're chasing. And chasing kills mystery. Chasing kills attraction. Because what a woman truly wants, on a deep, almost primal level, is to feel safe in your stillness. To feel your presence when she's in chaos. To feel your clarity when she's confused. To feel your emotional composure when she's spiraling. Not because you're trying to control her, but because you've already mastered yourself. This kind of energy can't be faked with tricks or manipulation. It has to come from inner alignment, from deep self-respect, from boundaries, not bravado, from calm, not chaos. And that's what this video is all about. We're going to explore 10 overlooked emotional switches, not tricks, not gimmicks, but powerful shifts in your energy, your mindset, and your presence that make a woman feel something she doesn't feel with just anyone. These are the things she doesn't consciously say out loud, but that her nervous system craves. And here's the beautiful twist. Once you stop chasing and start embodying these shifts, she can feel it. She knows something's different. She might not be able to put it into words, but you become the one man she keeps thinking about, the one man who feels different. Because you're no longer trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. So, if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things but still not getting the results you want, if you've ever had a woman go distant without warning and you couldn't figure out why, or if you're just tired of the emotional roller coaster and want to reclaim your peace and power, this video is for you. Not to turn you into a player, not to teach you tricks, but to help you reconnect with your masculine core in a way that changes the game forever. Because once you become the man who can stand still in his storm, you become the man a woman feels safe losing herself to. Let's dive into the first emotional switch. And everything starts with this. You don't attract love by chasing it. You attract it by becoming whole. Part 1. Emotional triggers that disarm and attract. Let's begin with one of the most misunderstood emotional triggers in the dynamics between men and women. It's not jealousy, it's not validation, it's not even love. It's uncertainty. Now, I know, uncertainty might sound like a negative thing at first. After all, don't we crave clarity in relationships? Don't we want to know where we stand? what someone feels, and what to expect next? Yes, eventually, but not in the beginning. Not when attraction is still forming. In the early stages of emotional connection, certainty ends the dance. Uncertainty keeps it alive. Let me explain. Have you ever met someone who seemed too available, too eager? Maybe they complimented you constantly, messaged you every hour, always had time for you. And yet, something felt off. Not because they were bad people, but because they were too easy to figure out. There was no mystery, no emotional texture, and just like that, interest began to fade. Women, especially emotionally intelligent women, are highly intuitive. They don't just respond to words, they respond to energy. And one of the most powerful emotional energies that draws a woman in is the calm presence of a man she can't quite read. Let that sink in. When she can't instantly label you, when she senses something deeper behind your silence, something unspoken but grounded, she becomes curious. And curiosity is the spark of emotional connection. It's not confusion. It's not manipulation. It's the quiet tension that makes her wonder, what is it about this man that I can't quite figure out? Why does his stillness make me want to lean in? This isn't about playing games. It's about mastering your energy. Because here's the truth. Most men are trying too hard to be understood. They overshare. They over-explain. They try to make a woman feel safe by giving her everything up front, every thought, every intention, every feeling. And while that might sound honest, it actually kills emotional tension. It removes the space where intrigue grows. On the other hand, the man who is still, who is calm, self-possessed and comfortable in silence, invites a different response. He doesn't have to perform. He doesn't have to chase. He allows the mystery of who he is to unfold slowly. And that slowness, it creates tension. It creates depth. It creates desire. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." In the realm of attraction, this calm mind becomes magnetic. Because while most men are reacting to a woman's emotions, you, if you choose to become that calm, grounded presence, invite her into your frame. You're no longer trying to decode her. You're letting her be curious about you. Now here's the twist. This isn't about being cold, or distant, or emotionally unavailable. In fact, those are just masks for insecurity. This is about being centered. It's about knowing who you are so deeply that you don't need to prove yourself. And when a woman senses that, she starts to feel something different. She feels safe. She feels intrigued. She feels emotionally pulled in, not by what you do, but by how you carry yourself. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're on a first date. She asks about your past. Instead of oversharing your entire life story, you pause, smile, and say, "There's a lot I could say, but I think stories are better when they unfold slowly." That one line, spoken from a place of calm self-assurance, will do more than any long-winded explanation. Why? Because it creates emotional space. It signals that you're not here to impress, you're here to connect, and you value depth over disclosure. That's the art of healthy emotional uncertainty. You're not creating anxiety, you're creating wonder. You're not playing hard to get, you're simply rooted in your own value. And that's what disarms her. That's what captivates her, because in a world where most men are loud, rushed, and reactive, the man who's calm, slow, and self-contained is unforgettable. So if you want to activate the first emotional switch that truly pulls a woman in, stop trying to be completely understood right away. Let her feel your stillness. Let her feel your quiet confidence. Let her wonder a little. Because real connection doesn't come from being predictable, it comes from being present. And when you master that, you stop chasing women. You start attracting them, naturally, effortlessly, and with lasting impact. Part 2. Emotional presence is her silent obsession. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The most attractive thing about a man isn't what he says. It's not even what he does. It's how he shows up. It's his presence. Women don't fall for words. They don't stay because of gifts, plans, or clever conversations. They stay because of how they feel when they're with you. And that feeling, it isn't created through effort. It's created through emotional presence. But let's be honest, most men are not truly present. They're either thinking about what to say next, trying to impress, or lost in their own heads, trying to calculate the perfect move. And women feel that, because women don't just hear your words, they read your energy. They feel your tension. They sense when you're disconnected. Even when you're smiling and nodding, they can tell if your mind is somewhere else. Why? Because emotional presence isn't about being physically close. It's about being energetically available. Let me paint you a picture. Have you ever sat across from someone who looked at you like you were the only thing that existed in that moment? No phone. No distractions. No need to fill the silence, just presence. You felt seen, heard, grounded. That's what emotional presence feels like to a woman. And when she experiences it, she doesn't want to let go. She might not even be able to explain it. But something inside her says, I feel safe with him. I feel seen, even when I don't say a word. I want more of this. Now let's contrast that with what most men are doing. Most men are caught in performance mode, trying to be funny, trying to say the right thing, trying to win her over. But here's the paradox. The more you try, the more disconnected you become. Because trying pulls you into your head, and when you're in your head, you're not present. The man who is present doesn't need to try. He simply is. He sits with ease in his own skin. He listens without rushing to respond. He breathes. He notices the moment. And that calm energy, it draws her in like gravity. You see, emotional presence is a kind of silent power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. It just exists, solid, unmoved, confident. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "A wise man is content with himself." That's the energy we're talking about here. You don't need her to feel okay. You don't need her attention to feel valuable. You are already grounded, and that makes her feel grounded too. She feels safe not because you're fixing her problems, but because your stillness gives her space to just be herself. And here's the beauty of it. You don't need perfect words. You don't need smooth lines. You just need to be here, now, fully. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine she's telling you about a stressful day. Instead of jumping in to solve it or tell your own story, you stop. You look her in the eyes. You let her finish. You breathe, you're calm, and then maybe you say nothing. Maybe you just nod and say, "I hear you." That's it. No fixing, no fidgeting. No rushing to escape the emotion. In that moment, you become a container for her experience. A grounded presence that doesn't react, but receives. And trust me, that moment stays with her longer than any compliment ever could. You become rare because most people are checked out. Most men are so anxious to be interesting, they forget to be interested. But when you're fully present, she senses something deeper, your emotional maturity. And that's the part of you she obsesses over. Not your looks, not your status, not your charm. Your calm, your stillness, your presence. Because in a world full of men who talk too much and listen too little, the man who brings peace is the man who stands out. So if you've ever wondered, why do I do all the right things, but still lose her interest? The answer may not be in what you're doing. It's in how you're showing up. Are you present? Or are you performing? Because the second you stop chasing a reaction and start embodying presence, you become magnetic. Not loud, not flashy, but unforgettable. So the next time you're with a woman, forget the lines, forget the act, forget the need to impress. Just be there, fully, calmly, with your full energy, and let your presence speak louder than words ever could. Part 3. Your absence triggers her need for validation. Let me ask you something powerful. When was the last time your silence spoke louder than your words? In a world where everyone is constantly connected, constantly available, constantly performing, silence has become rare. And in the realm of emotional attraction, rare equals valuable. Now hear this. Your absence, when it's rooted in strength, not spite, can be one of the most magnetic forces in a woman's emotional world. But let's be clear. I'm not talking about ghosting. I'm not talking about playing mind games. I'm talking about the kind of intentional absence that emerges from a man who values his peace. A man who isn't afraid to step back and protect his energy when needed. Because most men don't do this. They chase. They overcommunicate. They make themselves predictable. And here's the problem with predictability. It kills curiosity. And when curiosity dies, emotional connection begins to fade. But when you calmly, intentionally pull back, when you're no longer always available, when you stop flooding her world with validation and attention, something powerful starts to happen. She begins to wonder, where did he go? Did I do something wrong? Does he still feel the same about me? And in that emotional space, she begins to reflect. Now, this isn't about punishing her. This isn't about revenge or power games. This is about something deeper, emotional recalibration. It's about creating space for both of you to feel the gravity of your connection. Because here's the truth, most people don't value what's always there. They start to take it for granted. And that includes attention, love, validation, even you. But when you remove your energy, without anger, without explanation, you allow her to feel the loss, to sit with the silence, to ask herself, do I miss him because he gave me attention? Or do I miss him because I felt seen, held, and safe in his presence? That is the moment reflection begins. And here's the Stoic angle. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's what your absence should reflect. Not punishment, but peace. You're not stepping away to control her. You're stepping back to recenter yourself. Because when you constantly pour into someone else without checking your own reserves, you lose your center. You start attaching your worth to their responses. You trade your emotional stability for their attention, and that is the fastest way to lose both your self-respect and their attraction. Now, some men fear this. But won't she forget about me if I pull away? No. Not if you've made her feel something real. In fact, that's when memory sharpens. That's when she starts hearing echoes of your voice in moments of silence. That's when your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Let me give you a real-life example. Think about the most meaningful relationship you've ever had. Now imagine if that person stopped texting you for a few days, not because of drama, but because they were simply taking care of themselves. You'd feel it, wouldn't you? It would stir something in you. Not fear, but awareness. Reflection. Maybe even longing. That's what intentional space does. It awakens appreciation. But here's the key. Your absence has to be real. It must be anchored in purpose, not passive aggression. Not strategy, but a quiet return to your own center. When a man does this, when he steps back without explanation, without flinching, without chasing, he communicates something rare. I am whole with or without you. And ironically, that's the very energy that pulls her back in. Because now the question shifts. No longer is she wondering how much you want her. She's wondering, do I still matter to him? And that is the emotional switch. That's the moment where attraction deepens, not because you chased, but because you withdrew with grace. In that space, she feels the contrast. She remembers your calm. She replays the moments of connection. And without even realizing it, she begins to lean in. That's the beauty of healthy masculine absence. It doesn't create fear. It creates emotional gravity. So the next time things feel off, or you sense that you're trying too hard, giving too much, reaching beyond your own boundaries, step back. Not to manipulate, not to create anxiety, but to breathe. To return to your peace, to remember that you are not a performer, you are a presence. And sometimes the strongest message you can send is silence. Because when a woman can feel your absence, not as a threat, but as a reminder of your depth, that's when she realizes, his presence felt like peace, and I miss that peace. Part 4. Masculine calm makes her emotionally collapse in a good way. Let me tell you something most men don't realize. Your calm is more powerful than your charm. Your emotional stillness doesn't just ground you. It reaches her. It disarms her, and in the best way possible. It makes her melt. You see, most women today are used to leading emotionally. They carry the tension in relationships. They're the ones checking in, managing moods, feeling the pulse of connection. Why? Because many men simply don't know how to hold space. When emotions rise, men panic. They shut down, walk away, get defensive, or try to fix things too quickly. But here's the truth. A woman doesn't want you to fix her emotions. She wants you to be the calm in the storm. Think about it. What happens when two people are triggered at the same time? Chaos. Escalation. Emotional fires feeding off each other. But when one person remains still, grounded, centered, unwavering, the energy shifts, the storm slows, and the other person, she, starts to breathe again. This is what masculine calm does. It doesn't dominate. It doesn't control. It simply holds. And for a woman who's used to being the emotional anchor for everyone else, that's not just rare. It's healing. Imagine this. She's spiraling. Maybe she's anxious. Maybe she's overwhelmed, venting, testing, even lashing out a little. And instead of reacting, you stay still, not cold, not distant. Just rooted. You listen. You breathe. You stay in your body. And you let her storm pass through you, like wind around a mountain. In that moment, you become something she's not used to. Safe. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're not afraid of her fire. And when she feels that, truly feels it, she softens. She lets go. Not because you made her, but because she finally can. That's what I mean by emotional collapse. Not in a destructive way, but in a surrendered way. A healthy letting go. A release into trust. Because a woman can only let her guard down with a man who has shown, I won't flinch when you get emotional. I won't run when it gets messy. I won't fight your feelings. I'll stand beside them. And this is where Stoic philosophy comes in. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this You have the power to revoke at any moment. In modern terms, don't let her emotion become your emotion. Don't absorb the chaos. Don't try to change her to feel better yourself. Instead, master your inner state. Because when you master you, you become the anchor she's been searching for. And no, this isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally sovereign. She wants to know, can I be vulnerable around him without him breaking down too? Can he handle me at my rawest without losing himself? Because when she realizes the answer is yes, when she feels your calm, not as indifference, but as strength, she leans in. She opens. She lets herself fall. And here's something most men overlook. That moment when she finally drops the armor. It's not the time to rush in and say, "See, I told you everything's okay." No, that's the time to stay even quieter, even more present, even more grounded, because that softness is fragile at first. It's a test of whether your calm was real or just a tactic. So hold the space. Hold your breath. Hold her. Not physically, necessarily, but emotionally. And that's how you become unforgettable. Not because of how much you said, not because of how much you did, but because of how you made her feel when she lost her balance and realized you didn't. So if you've ever asked yourself, how do I break through her walls? How do I make her trust me without forcing it? The answer is simple, but not easy. Be the calm. Over and over again. Not for her, but because that's who you choose to be. That's real masculine strength. That's stoic attraction. That's what makes her drop the performance, the guard, the anxiety, and finally feel safe to be fully herself. Because she's no longer trying to lead the emotional charge. She's no longer testing to see if you'll crumble. She's no longer fighting to be heard. She's resting. Trusting, opening, and it all starts with you, becoming the man who holds his peace when the world spins sideways. Part 5. When you don't need her, she leans in. Let's break one of the biggest myths in modern dating. That showing devotion means showing need. That if you love someone, you should make them your everything. That chasing her, proving your loyalty, and putting her at the center of your world will win her over. But here's the truth that most men never learn. Neediness repels, even when it's disguised as love. Why? Because at its core, neediness doesn't say, "I value you." It says, "I can't be okay without you." And that energy, whether spoken or unspoken, feels heavy. It's not romantic. It's pressure. Now let me be clear. This doesn't mean you should be cold. It doesn't mean you shouldn't care. But there's a profound difference between loving someone and needing someone to complete you. Think about it like this. When a woman senses that you have no center of your own, that your mood rises and falls based on her response, that your whole life tilts, depending on whether she texts back or not, she doesn't feel cherished. She feels responsible for your stability. And that is exhausting. Real attraction doesn't grow in dependency, it grows in freedom. It grows when she looks at you and sees a man who's already whole, a man who doesn't chase validation, a man who chooses her, not because he needs someone, but because his life is already meaningful and she's welcome to be a part of it, not the center of it. Let me share a truth you might have learned the hard way. The moment she senses you need her more than she needs herself, she starts to pull away. Not because she's cruel, but because women, on a deep emotional level, are drawn to men who carry themselves with inner abundance. A man who doesn't need her to feel worthy, but who knows he is already enough. And here's the paradox. The moment you let go of the need to have her is the moment she starts to lean in, because now your attention becomes a choice, not a survival tactic. Now your presence feels like a gift, not a demand. Now she sees that you are here because you want to be, not because you're afraid to be alone. And that's when the game changes. That's when she begins to wonder, why is he so grounded? Why doesn't he need me the way others do? What is it about him that makes me want to prove myself? This isn't manipulation, it's magnetism. It's the natural pull of a man who lives by one simple Stoic principle. Happiness depends on self-sufficiency. Epictetus. This is what Stoicism teaches us so well. To stop outsourcing our peace, to stop tying our value to another person's presence, to stop clinging out of fear and start standing in inner stillness. Because the more complete you are within, the more space you create for real connection, not based on control, not based on emotional trading, but based on mutual respect and sovereign energy. Let me give you a real-life comparison. Think of two men. One drops everything the moment she calls. He cancels his plans, texts constantly, over-explains, always asks where he stands. He's consistent, yes, but he's also emotionally dependent. The second man, he listens deeply when they're together. He's calm, grounded, present. But when they part ways, he returns to his life, his mission, his rhythm. He doesn't chase, he doesn't need updates every hour to feel secure. Now ask yourself, which man creates emotional safety? Which man feels solid, trustable, magnetic? It's the second. Every time. Because a woman doesn't want to carry your sense of worth. She wants to feel that you already have it. And when she does, that's when her guard comes down. That's when she stops wondering, is he obsessed with me? And starts thinking, what can I do to earn his focus? Your detachment, when it comes from confidence, not coldness, is what creates that shift. You're no longer chasing, you're inviting. Not with need, but with purpose, with presence, with power. And here's the most liberating part. When you no longer need her to feel complete, you become the man who can love her most freely. Because now your love isn't anxious. It isn't manipulative. It isn't afraid. It's solid. It's sovereign. It's safe. So if you want to know the secret behind why the woman leans in more when you pull back, it's not because of strategy. It's because she can feel that your world doesn't collapse without her. She can feel your strength, your mission, your inner peace. And in a world full of men who attach, you become the man who attracts. Part 6. The quiet power of being unavailable at the right time. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt invisible, despite being constantly available? You answered every text. You said yes to every plan. You were there, all the time. And yet, your presence began to feel like wallpaper. Unnoticed, expected, taken for granted. It's painful, but it's also a wake-up call. Because here's the paradox no one talks about. The more available you are, the less valued your presence becomes. Not because people are ungrateful, but because human nature starts tuning out whatever is always there. Constant presence becomes background noise. And in relationships, especially romantic ones, that's where things quietly fall apart. Now I know what you might be thinking, but isn't consistency good? Yes, consistency is noble, but constant accessibility is not the same as healthy consistency. There's a quiet power in being unavailable at the right time, because when you're always there, you create no contrast, no tension, no space for your presence to be felt fully. But when you step back at the right moment, when your absence is intentional, not reactive, you allow your presence to breathe, to mean something again. Think about it. Why do we value the sun after a storm? Why does silence feel good after noise? Why does someone's voice feel more powerful? After a pause. Because contrast creates clarity, and strategic absence creates emotional gravity. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." Let that land for a moment. If you're constantly present in every moment, every conversation, every need, you slowly lose your center. You become scattered, diluted, spread too thin across too many people, too many emotions, too many moments. But when you learn to withdraw with intention, when you understand that your presence is a gift, not a given, that's when people start leaning in. That's when she starts leaning in. Let me give you an example. Imagine you text her every day, good morning and good night. You're always around, always ready to talk, always one call away. At first, she might appreciate the attention, but over time, she adapts, and eventually, it no longer feels special. But then, one day, without bitterness, without drama, you take a day to yourself. No explanation, no withdrawal of love, just space. You're hiking, reading, working on something that fuels you. Suddenly your absence says something, not loudly but unmistakably. He's not orbiting around me. He has a world of his own. That's the moment she notices your silence. She feels your absence not as rejection, but as mystery. And mystery creates emotional curiosity. Because now, your time isn't just time, it's a decision. And decisions carry weight. And here's the beautiful irony. The less you give constantly, the more valuable it becomes when you do. This is not manipulation. This is energetic balance. It's recognizing that your time, your energy, your presence, they're not infinite streams to pour without thought. They're investments, and when you invest with intention, you earn deeper returns, more respect, more appreciation, more magnetism. So, what does this look like in practice? It means you don't reply to every message instantly, not because you're playing games, but because you're present in your own life. It means you don't drop everything to fix her bad day, because you're also managing your own. It means you choose when to show up, and when you do, you're fully there, not halfway in with half your soul drained. And this is where Stoicism gives us clarity. You don't need to announce your value. You don't need to prove it through constant effort. You simply hold your ground. You live your life. You let your presence speak when you're present, and your silence speak when you're not. Because sometimes the most powerful message a man can send is, I don't need to be everywhere. I know exactly when to show up. And women, emotionally intuitive beings that they are, feel that. They feel the man who isn't rushing to be seen. They feel the man who knows his worth doesn't depend on constant contact. They feel the calm, quiet magnetism of someone who values his own peace more than chasing reactions. That's strength. That's modern masculinity. That's emotional mastery. So if you've been wondering, why does it feel like I'm doing everything but nothing's landing? Try doing less. Try stepping back, not with resentment, but with respect for your own value. Because when you stop flooding her world with your presence, you give her the space to feel your absence. And in that space, desire grows, curiosity returns, and when you come back, you're no longer just a man who's there. You're a man who is felt, and that makes all the difference. Part 7. Self-respect is her favorite form of attraction. Let me tell you something that most men overlook. You don't need to be perfect to be respected. But you do need to respect yourself, because in the world of attraction, charm fades, looks shift. Words can be doubted, but self-respect, that sticks. That speaks, that silently commands the room without saying a single word. Let me ask you, have you ever seen a man walk away from a situation, not out of anger, but out of principle? He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't beg for understanding. He simply says, "This doesn't align with who I am." And then he leaves. Calm, collected, certain. That's the kind of energy that makes people, especially women, stop and take notice. Because in a world full of men who will bend, perform, or overextend themselves just to be liked, the man who knows his standards and sticks to them is rare. And rare is magnetic. You see, women aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to certainty, to inner strength. To a man who holds the line, not to control her, but to honor himself. This is where most men go wrong. They chase approval. They stay in conversations they shouldn't. They laugh at jokes that cut them down. They tolerate disrespect because they're afraid to lose the connection. But here's the paradox. The more you betray yourself to please her, the more she loses respect for you. Because if you can't protect your own dignity, how can you protect the relationship? How can she trust your leadership, your values, your word? Respect starts with you. It starts with boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They don't push people away. They invite the right kind of energy in. Let's say she crosses a line. Maybe she mocks your work. Maybe she flirts with someone else to get a reaction. Most men get emotional. They argue. They try to explain why it hurts, hoping she'll stop. But a man with self-respect, he doesn't need to debate. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply says, "That doesn't work for me." And if it continues, he walks away. No threats, no drama, just clarity. And that clarity, it's unforgettable, because now you're not just attractive, you're respected. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Never value anything more than your own integrity." That's the code you live by when you lead with self-respect. It's not loud. It's not performative. It's not about proving anything. It's about holding yourself to a higher standard, even when no one's watching. And here's what most people never tell you. When a woman sees that you respect yourself more than you crave her validation, she begins to lean in. Not because you manipulated her, but because now you're not afraid of losing her. And a man who isn't afraid to lose a woman is a man she's afraid to lose. Because deep down she knows, if I don't show up right, he'll leave. Not to punish me, not to hurt me, but because he honors himself too much to stay where he's not respected. That's not ego. That's emotional discipline. That's inner alignment. That's what creates real attraction. Because here's the truth. She doesn't want a man who gives her everything just to keep her. She wants a man who gives her what aligns with his values and is willing to walk away if those values are violated, not in anger, but in strength, in stillness. So let me ask you, what are your non-negotiables? What are your emotional standards? When was the last time you told yourself, "I'd rather lose her than lose myself"? Because when that becomes your posture, when you'd rather be alone with integrity than together in chaos, you stop chasing. You start attracting. You become a man of presence, not pressure, of value, not validation. And when you speak, she listens. When you say no, she hears it. When you walk away, she feels the gap, because now your presence is earned. It's not given freely to anyone who wants it. It's given to those who meet you where you stand. And that, my friend, is the deepest form of masculine energy there is. Not dominance, not control, but self-command. So if you want to become unforgettable, not just attractive, but deeply respected, don't chase her admiration. Build your self-respect. Hold the line. And watch how everything shifts. Because once she knows you respect yourself, she'll never look at you the same way again. Part 8. When she sees you can walk away, everything changes. Let's talk about something that most men never dare to embrace. The power to walk away. Now, this isn't about ego. It's not about playing games. It's not about cold-hearted detachment. It's about knowing your values so deeply that you no longer fear losing someone who doesn't honor it. You see, most women, whether consciously or not, expect men to stay through disrespect, to stay through emotional games, to stay even when their standards are constantly crossed. Because let's be honest, society has raised generations of men to prove themselves, to earn love, to chase approval, to hold on no matter what, even if it means betraying their peace. But here's the truth. Nothing flips the dynamic faster than when a woman realizes you could walk away, and would, if needed. That moment changes everything. Because now you're not chasing her. You've become the standard. Think about this. When a man is afraid to leave, his energy shifts. He becomes hesitant. He tolerates too much. He starts accepting things he once said he'd never allow. And whether she realizes it or not, she starts to test. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Can I still respect him if he doesn't respect his own boundaries? Will he still show up if I stop giving him my best? Does he value me more than he values himself? And if the answer to those questions is yes, attraction begins to fade. Polarity dissolves. Respect disappears. Because deep down, a woman doesn't want a man she can control. She wants a man she can trust to lead, a man who holds the line, a man whose presence is earned, not assumed. That's why the man who can walk away holds a different kind of power. Not because he's trying to punish her, but because he refuses to abandon himself. Let me give you an example. You're in a relationship where things start to shift. She's distant, cold, maybe disrespectful, and instead of confronting her with fear, you calmly say, "I don't fight for attention. I don't negotiate with disrespect. I care about you, but I care about me more." And then you give her space, not as a tactic, but as a truth, because you'd rather lose her than lose your integrity. That energy, it's rare, it's magnetic, and it flips the dynamic completely. Now she has to evaluate what she's bringing to the table. Now she is wondering whether she still meets your standard. And that's when polarity returns. Because you're no longer the man who's trying to be chosen. You're the man who's already chosen himself. And this is where Stoic philosophy gives us the ultimate edge. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence of this entire shift. When you stop fearing loss, you become unshakable. Because your peace is no longer tied to another person's presence. You're grounded, rooted, free. And that freedom, it forces others to rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you stay whole. And yes, this will scare some people. Some women will leave when they realize they can't manipulate you. They'll walk when they see you won't stay through anything and everything. Let them. Because the right woman, the one who's emotionally mature, deeply aware, and ready for real connection, she'll feel safe in your strength. She'll soften in your certainty. She'll respect you, not because you demanded it, but because you modeled it. And she'll know, if I want to stay in his world, I have to bring peace, not chaos. I have to show up with care, not control. Because this man, he walks if the energy is wrong. And let me be clear, that kind of power doesn't come from loudness. It doesn't come from anger. It comes from stillness, from living by principle, not emotion. So if you've ever asked yourself, how do I stop being the one who's always chasing? How do I flip the dynamic without playing games? The answer is this. You show her, through action, not talk, that you can walk away at any moment and still walk forward with your head high. That's when everything changes. That's when she sees the difference between a boy who begs for love and a man who honors it when it's given and walks away when it's not. And that, my friend, is the moment she stops testing you and starts trusting you. Part 9. The one thing she'll never admit makes her submit. Let's talk about something most men never realize, and most women will never say out loud. It's not looks. It's not status. It's not dominance. It's certainty. Unshakable, grounded, masculine clarity. That's what makes a woman soften. That's what makes her lean in. That's what makes her surrender, not to a man's control, but to his inner compass. You see, a lot of men confuse control with leadership. They try to dominate. They try to force. They push their way into being heard, respected, or obeyed. And sure, it might create surface-level compliance. But it doesn't create real devotion. It doesn't create emotional safety. It doesn't make her trust you enough to let go. Because here's the truth. She'll never say directly. She doesn't want to be dominated. She wants to be led. And not by words. Not by commands. Not by empty confidence. But by a man who knows exactly who he is. A man who isn't reactive. A man who isn't shaken when things get emotional. A man who doesn't crumble under pressure or tiptoe for approval. That's the man she instinctively trusts. That's the man she surrenders to, not out of weakness, but out of relief. Because when a woman feels safe enough to submit, it's not because she feels less than. It's because she finally feels like she doesn't have to carry the emotional weight on her own. And that only happens when your emotional energy is stable. Let me give you a real example. A woman is spiraling. Maybe she's anxious, overwhelmed, or even testing your limits. She's chaotic, uncertain, looking for something solid to grab onto emotionally. Now, what most men do in that moment is one of two things. They either match her chaos, trying to argue or control, or they retreat, afraid of upsetting her further. But a man with an unmovable inner compass, he stays still, present, grounded, and without needing to say much, his energy tells her, "I've got me. I'm not here to control you, but I won't lose myself trying to please you either." And in that moment, something shifts. She breathes. She softens. She lets go. Why? Because her feminine energy, by nature, is fluid, emotional, expressive. It needs a container, not a cage. A strong presence, not a controlling force. A steady direction, not a loud demand. And when your masculine energy becomes that steady direction, she naturally finds her flow within it. It's the same reason a river needs banks. The water isn't less powerful because it's contained. In fact, it becomes more powerful, more directed, more alive. Your clarity gives her freedom, and clarity doesn't mean you always have the right answer. It means you're not afraid to decide. You're not waiting for her to tell you who to be. You're not apologizing for standing your ground with calm, quiet strength. That's Stoicism. That's the Marcus Aurelius mindset. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. You lead from principle, not preference. From truth, not tension. And she feels that. She feels the difference between a man who's trying to dominate her and a man who's already mastered himself. Because when you know where you're going, you don't need to convince anyone to follow. Your path becomes an invitation, and that's the subtle truth most women won't admit. They don't submit to men who are loud. They don't submit to men who are forceful. They don't even submit to men who are nice. They submit willingly, softly, fully, to the man who makes them feel safe without saying a word, because his actions are aligned. His energy is consistent. His presence is solid. She knows she can relax. She knows she can trust. She knows she won't have to be in control of everything anymore. That's not weakness. That's not a power imbalance. That's polarity. It's the natural dance between masculine certainty and feminine expression. And it only works when the masculine leads with calm, confident direction. So, if you've ever wondered, how do I get her to stop resisting me? How do I get her to trust me more deeply? Start here. Stop trying to impress her. Stop trying to manage her emotions. Stop trying to earn your place. Instead, become so rooted in who you are that you don't flinch when things get uncomfortable, that you don't lose focus when she gets emotional, that you don't waver when your values are tested. Because when she sees that you are unshakable, she doesn't need to resist. She doesn't need to lead. She doesn't need to protect herself from uncertainty. She can finally just be. And that's when the most powerful thing happens. Not submission to you, but surrender into the relationship. Into the moment. Into the man who's proven, without words, that he can be trusted with her heart. Part 10. The shift from being chosen to becoming the standard. Let's talk about the moment everything changes. Not just in dating, but in life. It's the moment you stop trying to be chosen and start becoming the standard. Now that might sound subtle, but it's a complete shift in how you carry yourself. It's the difference between waiting for approval and living in alignment. You see, most men walk around like they're in a job interview, trying to impress, trying to perform, trying to get picked by her, by society, by anyone. And when that happens, your energy becomes needy. It becomes soft. It becomes shaped by the fear that you're not enough until someone else says you are. But here's the truth. The more you wait to be chosen, the more you lose your power. Because you've handed it over. You've made your worth conditional, and she can feel that. You might not say it out loud, but every text, every over-apology, every hesitation screams, "I hope I'm good enough for you." And ironically, that's what makes her pull away. Because deep down, a woman doesn't want to choose a man who doesn't even choose himself. So what's the alternative? You stop chasing validation and start living from alignment. Alignment with your values, your purpose, your inner compass, your boundaries, your truth. You stop bending just to fit in. You stop waiting for her to see your worth, because you already know it. You live it, you embody it, and that's when the shift happens. She starts to feel it, without you having to say a word. You're not asking her to pick you. You're asking yourself, does she meet the life I've already committed to? Does her presence enhance the peace I've built, or disturb it? Is she aligned with my standards, or am I shrinking to keep her? And here's the twist. When you no longer need her choice, she starts questioning whether she meets yours. Because now the roles have reversed. You're not the seeker anymore. You're the standard. And being the standard doesn't mean you're arrogant. It doesn't mean you think you're better than her. It simply means you have a clear vision for your life, and not everyone qualifies to walk beside you. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're dating a woman who's used to being chased. She's used to men proving themselves, chasing her attention, tolerating her tests. But then she meets you. And instead of proving anything, you're just calm, grounded. You don't over-explain. You don't overreact. You listen. You lead. You hold space, but you also hold your standard. Now, suddenly, she's not thinking, do I like him? She's thinking, does he like me? Does he want me in his world? That's the moment when she stops performing and starts reflecting. That's the moment attraction deepens. not because you chased, but because you held your frame. And that frame comes from within, from knowing you don't need to be everyone's cup of tea. You just need to be true to yourself. This is where Stoicism guides us beautifully. Epictetus once said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, figure out your core, your values, your mission, your code, and then live from that place every single day. That's what makes you magnetic. Not money, not muscles, not status, but a man who stands so firmly in who he is that the world or a woman can either rise to meet him or step aside. You're not looking for permission anymore. You're not asking, "Do you think I'm good enough?" You're silently saying, "This is who I am. This is what I stand for. If you align, let's build. If not, I'll keep walking." And that kind of man is rare. That kind of energy is felt, not explained. So let me ask you, are you still trying to be chosen? Still waiting for someone to see your worth? Still giving your power away, hoping it'll earn you love? Or are you ready to flip the script? To stop chasing approval and start becoming the man who sets the tone? Because when you do, you stop being an option. You become the standard, not through ego, not through tactics, but through quiet, unshakable conviction in who you are. And when she feels that, when she sees that you don't need her to feel whole, that's when she starts to wonder, am I enough for him? Do I measure up to his world? Have I earned a place in his presence? That's the shift. That's the energy. That's the moment she stops looking at you as an option and starts viewing you as a man who could have had anyone, but chooses only what's in alignment with his deepest truth. So here we are. 10 emotional triggers. 10 shifts that don't just change how a woman sees you. They change how you see yourself. But let me leave you with this. This isn't about tricks. It's not about playing games. It's not even about getting the girl. It's about becoming the man you were always meant to be. And when that happens, attraction is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you are. Because here's the truth. You don't need to perform. You don't need to prove. You don't need to endlessly seek approval from a woman or from the world. You just need to become grounded in yourself, in your values, in your purpose, in your presence. You see, what we've explored in this video, these 10 emotional switches, they're not manipulation, they're mastery. They're what happens when a man turns inward, when he stops chasing validation and starts cultivating stillness, when he no longer needs to win someone's affection because he's already won his own respect. And that's what Stoicism teaches us. This philosophy isn't about coldness. It's not about shutting down your emotions. It's about learning to govern yourself before you try to influence anyone else. It's about showing up with strength, not noise, with calm, not control. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's your compass, not what she wants, not what the world expects, but who you decide to become. And when that shift happens, when you stop orbiting around her and start radiating from within, everything changes. Suddenly, she feels it. She feels that you don't need her attention to feel whole, that you're not reacting to her mood swings, that you're not waiting for her validation to decide how you feel about yourself. Instead, she's pulled into your frame, into your clarity, into your calm. Because now you're not chasing anything. You're attracting everything that aligns with your standard. And here's the part no one talks about. The moment you stop needing to be chosen is the moment you become magnetic. Because women don't chase the man who needs them. They chase the man who doesn't need anything, but welcomes everything that adds peace, growth, and truth to his life. So let me ask you this. Are you still trying to impress someone? Are you still over-explaining yourself? Are you still giving away your power to win love? Or are you ready to become the man who lives in alignment and lets the right people rise to meet him? Because that's what this is about. Not proving, becoming. Becoming the kind of man who doesn't just talk about boundaries, but lives by them. Becoming the kind of man who doesn't collapse under pressure, but finds clarity in the storm. Becoming the kind of man who doesn't run when tested, but stands tall with quiet strength. That's the man she respects. That's the man she opens to. That's the man she chooses, again and again. Not because you demanded her attention, but because your energy made it impossible to ignore you. And here's your final reminder. You are the standard. Not because you shout it, not because you wear a mask, but because you live it in your posture, in your decisions, in the way you treat yourself when no one's watching, in the way you walk away, not to punish, but to protect your peace. So stop trying to prove you're worthy. Start becoming the man who already is. Because the moment you do, she doesn't just notice, she feels it. And once she does, she'll never see you the same again. If this message spoke to you, if something in your soul woke up while watching, then this journey isn't over. Hit that like button to remind yourself, you are the standard. Subscribe if you're ready to build a life rooted in self-respect, calm strength, and unshakable presence. Because this channel isn't about chasing approval, it's about becoming the man who no longer needs it. And I want to hear from you. What part of this message hit the deepest? Drop it in the comments below. Your story, your clarity, your shift. It could be the spark for another man's transformation. You're not alone on this path. And the more we share our growth, the stronger we all rise.